Molweni mawethu masinamkele kwisiqendu sethu sale veki senkqubo Yilungelo Lakho. Sithembeke ukuba nilonwabela usuku lwenu lweholide njengoko ke livuyisana nosuku lwamalungelo oluntu i-Human Rights Day. Igama limsisanda Jonas ekuhambeni kwethuba ke siza kuvulela ingcingo ukuba nani nithabathe inxaxheba kwincoko yethu yanamhlanje. Inombolo zethu apha estudio ke ngu-01171466918 okanye ke ku-7146919. Email yethu consumer@sabc.co.za ukanti ungasifumana ke ku-Facebook or Twitter. South Africa today shines the spotlight on human rights issues in honor of victims of abuses. And as the country marks this historic day, consumers are also celebrating the milestones made in the protection and promotion of consumers' rights. This is in the spirit of World Consumer Rights Awareness Month, and that is why today we examine the extent to which consumer rights have become a reality in the lives of many.
Kubathengi abafana noMahlwane Khumalo amalungelo abantu awahlukile kumalungelo abathengi. Kanti kuyona lenyanga uhlanganyela nabanye abathengi abasemhlabeni wonke jikelele ekutheni begubhe iWorld Consumer Rights Awareness. Kule minyaka yama-12 yenkululeko abathengi abafana naye bathole uzuzo olukhulu emthethweni enzelwe abathengi. Kanti kuyisizathu samalungelo enzelwe abathengi ephasiswe eminyakeni endlulile. Kanti kule mthetho kubala the National Credit Act, the National Protection Act kanye the Protection of Personal Information Bill esandwa kuphasiswa. Akanti akuphelelanga lapho kuphela, uhulumeni walapha eMzantsi Afrika wasungula izikhungo ezizokwenza isiqiniseko sokuthi le migomo iyalandelwa. Kanti yona ke le mthetho enze ngcono impilo yomthengi uMahlwane. Ubone ukusebenza kwalemthetho mhlazana ehlukana nesinqandamathe sakhe lapho wonke umthwalo wezikweletu ubusemahlombe akhe.
I was having a garnish. Before I was having a garnish, I was having a debt like with another company. So I didn't know, but I was still paying it. I didn't know it is going to go to be a garnish. So those people, they garnished me. My HR called me. So when they called me, it was going to be 4,000. So according to my pay slip, or according to my salary, it was so hectic, it was so heavy for me. Atlas Finance or legal.
Wathi esabhekene nalokho wathola ucingo olumkhathazayo oluvela kubaqashi bakhe.
On that letter I found from my HR, there was the numbers at the bottom. I called those people. So I asked them, no, man, can't you please reduce the amount that you say I must pay it? So that amount, it was heavy for me. So that man, he says, no, okay, we are going to call you within 15 minutes time. So he called my HR, my payroll clerk. So after calling him, he said they are going to deduct 980. So I leave it like that.
Njengoba izinto zaya ngokwenyukela, wabona ukuthi lo mthwalo usungaphezulu kwamandla akhe, wazama ukufonela laba abayebawakeleta ukuze enze isivumelwano nabo sokuthi asiqede lesi sikweletu. Wathola ukumangala lapho ethola ukuthi emva kuba esekhokhe imali engaka isikweletu asehlile. Yilapho ke wasukuma wasebenzisa amalungelo akhe. Ngokwazi amalungelo abathengi waxhumana nehhovisi le Credit Ombudsman okuyibona abamsiza kakhulu. Ngaphandle kokusiqeda isikweletu sakhe wazithola ebuyelwa imali engango 14,000 wamarandi okwatholakala ukuthi ukhokhe kwaze kweqa kule mali abeyikweleta. Kanti ke namuhla ukhuthaza bonke abathengi ukuthi bewazi amalungelo abo ukuze bekwazi ukuzilwela.
So some people out there, they are sitting, they don't know where they can go because there are doors that they are closing, they don't know where must I go. I was so fortunate also for me to go to Legal Wise and met that lady to help me and say go to Credit Ombudsman, and from there we are going to take the matter from that. So Credit Ombudsman helped me a lot.
Umthetho the National Consumer Protection Act, the National Credit Act kanye neminye imithetho ekhuthaza abathengi ukuthi bazilwele. Kanti ngaphansi kwale mithetho miningi imithetho eyisiqiniseko kubathengi. Eminye yazo ilena. Yilungelo lokufundisa umthengi. Yilungelo lokuvikela imininingwane yomthengi. Yilungelo lokuthi umthengi achazwele kahle ngekontraki yakhe. Yilungelo lokungaluthwa. Yilungelo lokuthola impahla ephephile. Yilungelo lokuba sendaweni ephephile kanye nelungelo lokuthola izidingo zempilo kalula. Ngeshwa ke lamalungelo asayiphupho kubantu abaningi kanti konke lokhu kudalwa ukungafundiseki kahle kwabathengi. Unewoliedo wehhovisi le-The Credit Ombudsman uchaza kabanzi ngokubaluleka kokwazi amalungelo akho njengomthengi.
Kubalulekile ukuthi abathengi bayazi ama rights wabo, because if you don't know ama rights wakho, you've got a problem ukuthi should you run into trouble or run into problems with any service that you've taken either e-credit or maybe you are making use of ama cell phone services or whatever it is that you've entered into. If you don't know ama rights wako, you will not know where or how to get assistance, or ukuti are you able to question things or not question certain things. So it's very important ukuti you know exactly what your rights are, and you will know that by going through your contract, reading ukuti ama terms and conditions, what are they saying. That is part of where it starts. Ukuti, what are your rights, what are you entitled to or not entitled to. It's by checking ama contract wabo, what are the terms and conditions, what have you agreed upon before you sign on the dotted line. It's really a part of the important part of knowing what are your rights as a consumer.
Ochwepheshe bamalungelo abathengi bathi kule minyaka ye-12 yenkululeko ibe nenzuzo kubathengi abafana noKhumalo, nangoba kunjalo kuseseningi okusamele kwenziwe. Nompumelelo Mthethwa, Yilungelo Lakho, eGoli.
Sibuleleke Ngelonqaku. Do we have a good story to tell about the extent to which consumers are benefiting from the promotion and protection of consumer rights in South Africa? Well, to discuss this, masamkeleke ndwendwe zethu sinaye uOmar Amaru, yena ovela kwi-ofisi yomxazululi izingxaki zabathengi Consumer Goods and Services Ombudsman. Masamkeleke uPlatyi Mashego, yena ovela kumbutho iBlack Sash. Samkeleke noMorris Maluleke ovela kwa-National Credit Regulator. And from our Durban studios, we welcome consumer journalist Wendy Nola. Ladies, gentlemen, welcome to the program this afternoon. Maybe let me start off with you, Morris, just to look at some of the biggest challenges for consumers when it comes to issues of their rights up in South Africa.
Thank you for having me. We still have a challenge in terms of getting consumers to exercise their rights, especially in cases where they apply for credit. They normally do not exercise their rights, not because those rights are not available, but maybe in most cases you'll find that the credit providers ababa nikeza an opportunity or maybe now because we believe ama credit providers is their responsibility as well as ama clients wabo to make sure they outline those rights to ama clients wabo and baba nikeza an opportunity to exercise them. So it's so much unfortunate that the movement when it comes to consumers exercising their right is still a challenge, but I still believe we actually getting there.
Tatuplatyi nisebenza nabantu on the ground, xa nina nijongile abantu bayawazi amalungelo abo na?
Yeah, it is bonge ukuthi sibe la kulungelo lethu. Sisebenza ngabantu kanje, siyinhlangano ezama ukwenza ukuthi abantu mabazi amalungelo wabo. And phezulu kokuthi bazi amalungelo wabo, bayazi yini ukuthi bawasebenzise. And ukuwasebenzisa ukwazi ukuthi mawusenkingeni wenza njani. Makuba uhlangabezana nenkinga, eliphi elinye inyathelo kumele ulithathe. Yile ndlela esizama ukuthi size abantu emphakathini wethu. Inkinga mina mangibuyela kule question yakho ibuzile ukuthi kuyadependa ukuthi abantu ba-exercise amalungelo wabo ngeyiphi indlela. Bakhona bayazi ukuwa exercise. Inkinga ekhona ukuthi sithola ukuthi umnyango we credit regulator, umnyango we credit ombuds, umnyango we consumer goods and services ombuds, iminyango confuse umphakathi wethu ukuthi makube banenkinga abantu mabazamile inyathelo zabo umuphi umnyango kumele baye kuwo. There is that confusion, and so for mina ngithi coincidence yokuthi si celebrate a Human Rights Day today ne Consumer Protection Rights Awareness Week or month kuyabonisa ukuthi namhlanje sine credit regulator la sine consumer goods and services ombuds la ziyabonisa ukuthi le inhlangano ezimbili kwakumele zibe ndawenye so that there is no confusion that is given out there for consumers when they are in a difficult situation. They don't now know where to lodge.
All right, so let me just go to Wendy in Durban. Wendy, just as your opening remark, Babu Plati has just touched on issues of confusion for consumers because there are so many bodies out there that are supposed to protect consumers. Just on the challenges of consumer rights in South Africa.
Yes, absolutely. Quite rightly said. It's all very well having this wonderful consumer protection in the form of the various pieces of legislation, which we didn't have 16 years ago when I started specializing in consumer journalism. But if people, A, don't know their rights, and B, are confused or completely ignorant about where they can go to get help when they need it, it's kind of meaningless. There are a lot of bodies out there, but I'm not sure that the average consumer knows where to go to get help. For example, there are a number of ombudsmen, and I know that people will phone the wrong ombudsman to get help on an issue that office doesn't deal with. You've got the banking ombudsman, you've got the credit ombud, you've got consumer goods and services ombud, you've got what have I left out? Banking ombudsman. Yeah, there are a lot. I think for the average consumer it is quite confusing.
All right, but Wendy, what should be done?
What should be done? Well, it always comes down to money. I think for starters, the National Consumer Commission could be doing a lot more in terms of educating people. There are a lot of people in this country and a lot of platforms to do that on, and it always comes down to budget. So there's that challenge. I know that the consumer affairs officers in the various provinces have budgets to do education, and they do as much as they can. But it's never, to my mind, going to be enough. I'll give you a very basic example. One of the great protections, the protection that affects all of us with the Consumer Protection Act is the right to return defective goods. In the past, before the CPA, if something you bought broke within 6 months, you'd go to the store and they would say, okay, we'd repair it. There was no really other option that the consumer could have because the store had complete control.
Okay, Wendy, we'll delve more.
If something breaks.
All right, we'll delve more on the CPA just in a moment. Omar, your opening remarks in terms of the challenges in the country, and I mean what has been highlighted is that there's a confusion with people will call this office but they're looking for another office. Is this something that you find?
Yes, Yilungelo Lakho. In terms of the challenges, study consumers in knowing where to direct their complaints. As the Office of Consumer Goods and Services Ombud. However, in our office, then we direct you to the right ombudsman because these bodies, the regulator, the jurisdictions, we cannot just take any complaint like when this is a chilo, credit, banking, redirect accordingly. To such an extent, we even capture the complaint, recycle the right ombudsman, say complaint form to avoid who is a consumer back and forth. This is the wrong place. We capture your complaint, we direct it, and then we tell you for follow-up, you'll use this number and direct you accordingly.
Makesibambe apha ke mawethu sithithi evenkeleni. Kodwa ke ngaphambi koko nikhumbule ukuba nani ningathabatha inxaxheba kwincoko yethu ngokusalela umnxeba ku 0117146918 okanye ku 0117146919. Email yethu consumer@sabc.co.za. Okanye ke ningasifumana ku Facebook or Twitter. Welcome back usabukele inkqubo Yilungelo Lakho apha ke ku SABC 1 Mzansi for sure. Ufayilisa izimvo zakho ke sitsalela umnxeba ku 0117146918 or 0117146919. Ungathumela ke ne-email ku consumer@sabc.co.za or catch us on Facebook or Twitter. Dathumaleke manibuyele kuwe. Siyayazi bana kule nyanga sijongene ke nenyanga ye-World Consumer Rights. Mhlawumbe into onosacaphulela ngayo when it comes to this month and exactly what it is the campaign is for.
Okay. This is a very special month for TINA as an NCR. We are in joint conjunction ne Great Ombuds, busy OB outside broadcast in actually educating consumers to we call it know your credit status. Because what we have actually found is that the consumers do not actually know much about their credit profile. How am I conducting myself when dealing with credit? Now it becomes a problem when they have to go and apply for credit. So we are actually engaging our consumers together in the credit ombuds. And on the other hand, we're trying to re-emphasize in the consumers consumer rights. Siba explain or siba chasele ngama rights wabo ukuthi bawazi ngokuthi you find that a lot of consumers, much as we might take it for granted ukuthi bawazi amalungelo wabo, when it comes to credit we have picked up ukuthi they are actually not even aware of that.
I understand that you are working together. I mean, what has been the feedback? It's a month now and your campaign has already started.
Yes, ntho e re bona ngetsagala like haba bako NCR ba le busy ba le credit ombud. Rona as consumer goods and services, we are also going to media in terms of educating the consumers ka CPA. So the feedback that we are getting, it's massive because we get those influx calls about complaints. So it shows gore batho ne ba sa tsibi gore you know ha ke rekile ntho ke na le tukelo ya gore nka e khutisetsa within 6 months. That comes as an automatic warranty based on CPA. So re a bona gore this education is helping a lot by the consumers tsa rona. However, we are really there. We are still crawling because are so cover batho ba bangata because we can see ka di stats tsa rona gore this educational campaign is within the urban areas. In terms of rural areas, I would say it's only even a portion, but we are working on a plan towards that. When the rural areas, they need to know their rights. Yes.
Wendy, it is a World Consumer Rights Month. Just your thoughts in terms of what this campaign should focus on. I know that there is a theme guiding this month, but just again in terms of whether South Africa is doing enough as well.
Well, the theme is fix your phone right. So certainly in this country, we have a situation where for a lot of people, the only means of accessing their rights, of getting help when they're in trouble, is their prepaid cell phone. Now, just a practical thing, if you don't have email or whatever and you have to phone an ombuds office or the bank or whoever you have a problem with, a lot of people's airtime runs out before they've even got to speak to anybody. And then if they do speak to somebody, then they must put it in writing. And there are all these very practical, logistical problems that keep people away from getting justice. So in terms of themes, that would be my thing as a South African who deals with all sorts of consumers across the spectrum, that access to help, that physical, being able to, how you get help, emails, the language issue. There's just so many barriers. It's very difficult for me to know where to start.
Yeah, Sister Sandra, I just wanted to catch up on earlier tonight during this month. Earlier in the week, we partnered with Credit Ombuds to capacitate organizations on the ground around the financial literacy, plus also on social assistance. So there is some work that we're doing. But it's also important to note the kind and level of education that we're getting around the consumer protection, around the consumer awareness, in terms of the rights of the consumer. It's not enough. There are still gaps. For us, we would have loved to see within our communities, kubenama special groups, whether it's consumer groups, whether it's what you call them, so that there is at least that relationship between communities and consumer organizations in those localities where education will be consistent. Plus also the gap in schools. We don't find any meaningful education around financial literacy, even from primary school. So that it's important to note ukuthi abantwana bakhona ukuthi bafaka abazali into debt because they want this. We live in a world of consumerism. So it's important our consumers become aware. It's important our consumers understand that they've got a right, and it's an important right. It's a right that they can use to also ensure that they bring down prices. It's a right that they can use to ensure that they redirect focus their business, because we're facing a business sector or in markets which want to exploit our consumers. And the bulk of the consumers that we have in this country are the poor people, more especially people who are earning social grants, which you find companies targeting those people. for ama airtime, you know, ama loans, which gives us a problem in terms of the National Credit Act. Is it correct for business to target poor people who are provided with loans in terms of the Constitution in Section 27 that they need to be given that money to cover their basic needs? But now you find a business targeting them as a target group to make profit. So it becomes a problem for us in terms of irregular lending and also unconscionable, unethical conduct in terms of marketing services towards the poor and also people who are illiterate and those who cannot even understand. So that's the kind of challenges that we still have. The education drive is there. We're doing it also as with us as Black Sash, as a civil society. We're trying to do it with the limited resources, but it's not enough. It still becomes a gap.
I do want to come to this issue. The education is there, but are you getting people who are saying, yes, we want to receive that information?
I will say yes, given the number of calls that we are getting, it shows but out there, how but they make use of it. But I like to point out the issues some people frustrated they don't have airtime, access to that complaint process. That is the problem. But what I can guarantee the consumers is that as the Ombud body, we are looking into that, even the lowest income person access the complaint process is some cost, you know. But at the same time now, if you phone our call center number and then you run out of airtime, then we phone you back. That's what we do so that we can complete lodging your complaint. So our office focus if ever the National Credit Regulator, their education is not heard, and in any case wakena moskolotong usabona or warekanto usatsibi, and then maybe li office yabo abutika mona ya educator kwaskatu sakhala. Runa as the Ombuds officer, we are saying we are there. You don't have to feel you have hit the wall. Okay, you have done those things. You've made those mistakes.
But you can still get
exactly. That is our point.
All right, let's just hold it. Let's just hold it right there. I'll come back to you and you'll comment after our break. For now, let's take another commercial break. After this. Siyamkela kwakhona mawethu phambi kokuba sihlabele mgama ngencoko yethu ithi ndinikhuthaza ukuba nibhale phansi inombolo zendwendwe zethu sithi ke sininike zona ngethuba ke sisemoyeni. I know I stopped you right before our break, but you wanted to comment on what Omar was saying as well.
Yes, I was itching because all I wanted to say was the kind of education that we want to provide to our people in terms of rights should not only stop there. Once they've logged in a complaint, say with the consumer ombuds, they should also be aware in terms of what progress the office is doing. They must monitor that. And if there is a problem that they encounter, our offices are open in terms of the helpline that we have so that we are able to assist them in going forward.
All right.
So it's important not only to understand your rights, but it's also important how you go about if your complaint is not dealt with appropriately.
So we'll talk about that, and I think that's a good point. For now, let me just go to a caller. Let me just go to a caller for now. Ali osetonga Ali wamkelekile nkubeni? Ali ukona? Ali ukona? Okay, ingatu Ali ke akakho ke. Ungaqhubeka tata.
I wanted to say, whilst we're talking about the awareness for consumers, we need to also realize that our businesses also need education. There might be awareness around consumers, but there might be reluctance from businesses to comply with the Consumer Protection Act. So there is always that balance that we need to strike.
All right, I'll come to Wendy just now. For now, let me go to Ali in Tongat. Ali, are you there? Ali, ukona dada? Ngata simfumani ku Ali kwa kona. Wendy, are you there? Okay, Wendy is not there, but I wanted to look at the issue of enforcement. But before I do that, let me come back to you in terms of what Udada was saying. Like you were saying that, yes, a person will complain, but there's another process that must happen. How is it that you are helping consumers in this regard? And in terms of that?
Okay, in Terietsang is the Office of Consumer Goods and Services Ombud. Once you placed a complaint, Leruna, you get an SMS to update you the progress of the complaint. And if the Ombudsman has ruled his final decision and you as a consumer are happy with that final decision, we give you a letter to go to the National Consumer Commission, the NCC. We don't say the Ombudsman has ruled and that's it. We give you a letter and refer you to the NCC. And if your complaint is not handled the way you would like at the NCC, then we refer you to the tribunal. So all the steps are being followed. We don't say we are the end of it. We give you access to go to the next level. And in terms of the issue I raised saying the suppliers, we are not only educating the consumers, we are also educating the suppliers, the retailers. We do have workshops Libona so that they understand Horibona as the suppliers, what are their obligations towards the consumers and what is CPA saying regarding their conduct towards the consumers. So as I said earlier, it's not a process that will happen overnight, but we are working on that. Some of the suppliers or retailers or manufacturers has already grabbed the CPA and they are running with it. So hence we are always saying to the consumers, look out before you go and shop at a certain retailer, look out as to how do they handle complaint, and you can access all that information more the website in Tabon.
All right.
Sandra, one of our mandates as the National Credit Regulator is to educate consumers and create awareness. Just to reiterate on what Usisi Oma have said in terms of escalation of complaints. Same applies to us. We acknowledge complaints. We look into the complaints. If it's resolved against your favor, we give you a letter which you will have to take to the National Consumer Tribunal, who will actually then facilitate or mitigate. So talking about the effect of education to consumers. As and when we hold our workshops and when we do radio interviews and what we're doing currently, we do get calls from consumers, like on your Monday, get calls in terms of following up. Then for me, that shows that people do watch and listen.
Okay.
And actually it helps them, but it's a question of whether they actually exercise those rights or not. But I always like to re-emphasize the issue of responsibility as well. So because you don't have to look at your rights as a consumer, but look at whatever decision that you make, is it a responsible decision?
All right, Wendy, are you there now? Hi, Wendy, can you hear me? All right, we'll try Wendy again because I do want to talk to her about some of these issues. This is something that she deals with a lot as well. But just to move forward and break down the CPA, we know that it came into effect in 2011, and I mean, it was good news for consumers. Let's just maybe start off with what is the Consumer Protection Act about?
Okay, Consumer Protection Act bonsa or itlhagisa the rights tsa batho. What are your rights when you go and purchase or when you enter into an agreement or a contract with a supplier? So it deals with issues like when you touch the issue of the returns and refund. It tells you exactly in terms of purchasing goods or product or even a service, what are your rights? It says you've got a 6 months warranty that comes automatically. It overrides any warranty within the internal policies of the store. So consumers need to know about that. But then today our consumers we do not return when we've changed our mind or when we don't feel like it anymore. CPA states you return if there's a defect.
Okay.
Yes. So we are getting complaints. People are returning because they don't feel like it. It doesn't match with their clothes. Such things.
So I suppose those are the nitty-gritties people need to get to know about the CPA. There's an issue of deliveries as well when it comes to the CPA. I was reading somewhere where somebody orders online, and these are some of the issues that people raise. According to the CPA, what does the Act say?
Okay. With regards to the National Credit Act, when you sign an agreement, it means you have to get a copy of that agreement. It has to be explained in a language that you understand. The issue of language policy is something that we're trying to address with a lot of our credit providers. What it means by language policy is if you stay in KZN, kukhulunywa isiZulu, nesingisi, then you need to have employees or maybe agents abazokwazi ukuthi bachasele abathengi ngalolimi abaluzwisisayo, and you need to have those credit agreements in those languages ukuthi abantu bakwazi ukuthi usifaka kuyiphi inkinga in terms of understanding what the terms and conditions of those contracts are. Now it's a problem ukuthi consumers do not actually exercise those rights because they sometimes feel ukuthi if I ask a lot of questions maybe they might decline me this loan. And one other thing is, as a consumer you have a right to know why was the loan declined. That will give you an opportunity to go and make corrections.
Okay.
If it's about the fact that you have been negatively listed due to the fact that one was conducted previously, then you can go and correct this. If it's in terms of affordability,
Yes.
you can actually work on getting rid of some of your debts. That is why in Namanje we're busy with this affordability assessment, which is a problem. Uplachi spoke about reckless lending.
Okay.
It's due to the fact that affordability assessment is not done by a lot of credit providers.
Okay, so you were touching on the National Credit Act there. For now, maske siye evenkileni ke mawethu ukubuyela ke ngase evenkileni. Welcome back mawethu ke ithindi nikhumbuza ukuba nawe ungavakalisa izimvo zakho ngusitsalela umnxeba ku 0117146918 okanye ke ku 0117146919 ungathumela ke ne-email ku consumer@sabc.co.za or catch us on Facebook or Twitter. We do have a caller online, Ali in Tongat. Ali, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
And good afternoon to the panel. Well, what I would like to know is that a lot of our people are getting into debts. They're getting into municipal debts. They're getting into service debts from body corporates, etc. But what I'm finding is that the main householder is held accountable. Can we not look at legislation changing to make it a collective responsibility? If 5 people are living in the house, 5 people must be held accountable for those debts.
All right. I don't know if we got that question. Ali, can you just explain more in terms of how you want this to work? Okay, Ali is not there, but we do have Mbongeni. Mbongeni wamkelekile nkubeni?
Yebo sisunjani?
Yaphila tata kunjani?
Ngiyaphila sisi. Yeah, sisi nginenkinga la sisi. Kusho ukuthi mina nginenkinga la yesifuba sisi. Ngathenga i-stove le-express. So mangisithatha leso stove lesi ngasengiselewa ukubhadala. Ngenxa yokuthi umsebenzini but ake ngithi kume kancane ngenxa yokugula. Base bese bithumela umuntu ukuthi azosithatha. But bazongilinda isikhathi esingangenyanga. After 2 weeks mina ngayithola imali ngabhadala until ngaze ngaqeda. Manje mase ngithi ngiyosifuna istove sami ngitshela ukuthi basithengisa. And manje balokhu ngithumela bebeke ngisele ama-SMS ukuthi angibuye ngizothola something. Manje ngicela ukwazi ukuthi lapho ngingasizakala kanjani ukuthi ngikwazi ukubuyela imali ngabhadala ngaqeda.
All right, Enkosi kakhulu Tata Mbongeni. Oma, let me try and find out whether you can help Mbongeni, because he says that he suffers from asthma and he was off work because he was sick, and he had bought a stove. But what happened was during the time when he was not working, he couldn't pay for the stove, so they took the stove, and when he did get money, he went to pay, but when he asked for the stove back, they said they sold it. In a situation like this, how do you help a consumer like Mbongeni?
Okay, in terms of that consumer, Sisanda, they accepted his money when he went back and paid for the stove, but when they have to return the stove, they say they don't have the stove. So it's within his right as a consumer, but I'm sure Maurice will help. Is it right as a consumer but just for the fact after that he got money, he went and paid, and then when he has to get the stove back, they say they don't have.
But what must he do now?
He needs to lodge a complaint with us, but then he has 2 complaints. He has a complaint with credit that affects credit, because now because but the ombudsman will look at the fact that he was paying, and now when they have to deliver, they didn't deliver, and it's within his right as a consumer, so he can lodge a complaint.
Please take down those numbers.
Okay, if I have to answer the issue here, the credit agreement that the consumer have signed, like I indicated, it's important to read your credit agreement. or maybe get somebody who will actually explain it to you, because sometimes in some of these credit agreements kuna clause which clearly states ukuthi in the event that you get retrenched, there is a credit cover that will actually cover the for your debt, and which most of the people, they actually do not actually take that into consideration, because basuka bangayifunda the contract and nobody bothers to explain to them. So in the repossession, there are processes that need to be followed. You don't just pitch up in somebody's house and take the stove or whatever item. It has to be through the courts. You should have to follow right procedures before you can actually repossess, and you have to notify them and give them time as well. So I still believe the repossession was not legal. Hence, CPA as well is actually part to that.
All right. Let me go to Wendy for now. I mean, we are talking about consumer rights. We are talking about the legislations that we have, consumer protection, the acts that are in place. Well and good that they are there, but enforcement, and I know that this is something that you wanted to talk about, and that's a huge challenge.
It is. Look, things have improved. Last year, and before that, the National Consumer Commission, which is mandated to enforce the Act, was woefully understaffed and underprepared to deal with the complaints that came in. So you had people thinking, oh yay, finally an organisation that can help me, and they were sending complaints in, the phone lines weren't working, their written complaints weren't being answered. I was being deluged with more complaints saying, the NCC is not responding. We have a new commissioner now, and what's happened is they've realised that the commission couldn't deal with everything, so they've carved out, which is why you've got something like the Ombudsman for Consumer Goods and Services, which wasn't there before. That's picking up a lot of the slack, and they are now mandated. The motoring industry ombudsman handles motoring complaints. So through those organisations, which are running very efficiently, as far as I can tell, consumers are getting a lot more help than they used to. But again, for the poorest of the poor, often they lack awareness about these bodies exist, and they don't know what their rights are in the first place. So in many cases, they wouldn't even know that they had a complaint. For example, as Morris was saying, if something is unfairly repossessed, many people wouldn't realise that there needed to be a court process before that happened. It happens a lot with cars as well. So I would say we're getting there. We're certainly moving in the right direction on all fronts. It has been 3 years, for example, since the CPA came into effect, so I would have liked to have seen us a lot further than we are now in terms of awareness and enforcement, but to be fair, we're getting there.
All right, just one message from Facebook that I can read. Malibongwe Pele Manyonya uthi kule minyaka i-20 singabathengi sifunde lukhulu ngamalungelo ethu nangendawo apho singafumana uncedo malunga neengxaki esithi sihlangane nazo. All right, Tatu Platya, I know you want to contribute on this one.
No, I just wanted to come back to the responsibility of the company, whereby in terms of the Credit Act, there is Section 129 that was supposed to be given to the consumer in terms of a letter that indicates to the consumer that they need to go for debt review.
Okay.
So that there must be an arrangement. But also, once we talk about consumer rights, we must also talk about consumer responsibilities. If I am sick, it's my responsibility to go and notify the service provider or the company where I bought goods, so that there is some arrangement that will be made in the event that I'm not able to pay as agreed. So those responsibilities as consumers, we need to exercise them as well, so that we don't exercise the rights and overlook the responsibilities as well.
All right. For now, let's take our last commercial break. Welcome to our final segment. Sihlabele phambili ngenkqubo yethu. Sinayo Sipho emnxebeni. Sipho wamkelekile enkqubeni?
Sanibona ninjani sisi?
Ngiyaphila bhuti kunjani?
Ngiyaphila, ukhuluma noSipho Ndima eMondlo esigodini sakwamachani. Yebo sisi, yazi ngicela ukubuza la ukuthi ngabe ilungelo lami yini mangabe ngiyovula isitolo, mangiyovula isikoloto esitolo ukuthi banginikeze icontract engizwa kangcono like isiZulu.
Okay.
All
right, he's looking at the issue of language when you are receiving your contract.
All credit providers, not abathengisi or ababolekisi ngemali, they are aware ngokuthi language policy is key. Hence, nginikeza an example ukuthi if you are in KZN, for instance, you need to have contracts that are actually drafted ngesizulu nangesingisi. or makube kunelinye lama language la akhulunywa la eMzansi ukuthi likhona KZN, you need to have that, or you need to have employees or mhlawumbe ama consultants that will explain to each and every consumer ngelimi abalizwisisayo. But manje we actually insisting kuma credit providers ukuthi they need to submit languages wama areas from where they are actually operating. Kungasabe indaba yokuthi they need to just employ people.
But is it something that's happening though?
Yeah, it is happening.
Okay.
It is happening. Hence I'm saying even consumers, they have a right to can actually demand that kind of a contract.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, in addition, Uputi also has a right to take that contract. Aye ekhaya, he's got 5 days to sit down with that contract. Ayicubulule kahle. And ECPA or National Credit Act specifies what contract must be drafted in plain and simple language. Whether that plain and simple language means converting that to a language here consumer is also an issue to be seen what are businesses complying with that. So, but it's a fact that some consumers are finding it difficult to comprehend the language that is contained in the...
What about verbal explanation as well?
Look, it's one of the things that they need to do, you know. Before signing that contract, take the consumer through that contract to make sure where is this. Like I indicate, I just want to actually reiterate on what is said in terms of the 5 days cooling off period. As a consumer, you have that right to can take it home, get somebody to actually explain it to you. If you are not happy, you can maybe before the expire of that 5 days, you can take it back and pay back the money without actually paying any interest. But like most consumers are actually afraid or shy to can actually do that. So it is within your right to can actually take it back. And if you're not happy in terms of the terms and conditions, it is within your right to can actually take it back as well.
In terms of these campaigns, I know that the NCR is running a campaign, or may also running a campaign in the Ombud office, but are they effective?
Yeah, our position from where we sit as the Black Sash is that there is some work that these regulatory structures are doing. The fact of the matter is that is it enough? We know there's also a consumer fair that is also doing its bit. There's us as the NGOs that are doing our bit. The problem will always rely in terms of how best can we restructure a framework that encompasses all of our activities so that we focus on one activity. Currently, the National Credit Regulator does its own thing. Ombuds does its own thing. They all do their own things. NATI as civil society, we will go our own way. So it becomes confusing at the same time to consumers as well. So there has to be, yes, in terms of illegal framework, the pieces of legislations are very progressive. But in terms of our work, in terms of implementing that, consumer awareness, credit, financial awareness, we are going our own routes, confusing e-consumers more than they are currently confused.
Oma, is there a plan though to consolidate all of these institutions?
Okay, from the point here, like Mona Kuri, Arisobi listener structure sales are right now. What we do, we join eventually Credit Ombud or NCC, but all of us in one room, that will be great. I think it's something that we should go back and look at in doing, but and avoid really 2 or really 3. For now, we currently joined the Credit Ombud, the NCC, doing some campaigns, you know. And earlier when we started the program, we talked about educating Wanaskolo is the best tool. That's what Abuti said here. So that is exactly what NCC is doing. But as Nola has said, the budget is also killing us, because we can have all these things planned, but to actually make them effective, it will be a budget constraint issue. But however, we're really looking at those things, because we believe when you go to schools and educate young people, those people will give a better education or a better reminder to the parents whenever they're doing shopping.
All right. Yes. Wendy, what would be your advice to consumers about how they can empower themselves and to exercise these rights?
Okay, well, first of all, I just wanted to cut in on what the others were saying about school education. I couldn't agree more, because don't forget, in the last, I don't know how many years ago, the age of majority dropped from 21 to 18. So you've got boys and girls in matric who are turning 18 have reached the age of majority, and they can be targeted by people phoning them on their cell phones, wanting to get them contracted to cell phones, getting them hooked up, cell phone contracts, getting them to join gyms, and they don't know what their obligations or rights or anything is. They go in blind, they get into trouble if their parents don't bail them out. Now they're sitting with an adverse credit listing at the age of 18, 19 as they're starting their adult life.
All right, Wendy, unfortunately time is up. I get mawethu ixesha linomona sesifikelele esiphelweni sencoko yethu yanamhlanje. Let me thank my studio guests for making time to be with us today. Ndizibambe ngasibini ke nakho nibabukele ngokuba nathi kude kubeleli ithuba. Nikhumule ukuba impinde yenkqubo zethu ke ngemivulo kodwa ke niphawule ukuba amaxesha atshintshile. Our new repeat time slot, all right? Our repeat time is from 9 to 10 on Mondays. But for me, Sisanda Jonas and the entire team, it's goodbye. It is my last day, and I do want to thank you all for your contribution to the program and for welcoming me into your homes. For me, it's goodbye.
Yilungelo